Welcome back, everybody. Today we've got the 2026 free agency. For every team, just one move they need to make this offseason. As we can see with the salary cap space, a lot of teams with young quarterbacks, such as the Titans and the Raiders, have big money to spend. But I also included one signing for all you guys who have less than $5 million of cap space. Just one move that could trickle down into having a big effect on the 2026 outlook. So let's get it started. Drop a comment if I got your team right, and let's get into it. Starting it off, we've got the Cardinals signing Khalil Mack. I think they could use some veteran leadership, especially when a year that they're in a quarterback transition year. You're going to be somewhat competing, and in order to get by in this division, you have to play good defense. You have the potent offenses of the Rams, Seahawks, and Niners, and I think Khalil Mack still has some juice. He had 5.5 sacks, but a lot of forced fumbles, and this team is needing of some leadership to really help develop their athletes on the defensive side of the ball. It might not even be worth it for the production, but the overall mentorship that you're going to get from Khalil Mack is exponential. And then we've got Jalen Nailor going to the Atlanta Falcons. I think this is a great fit, specifically in the Kevin Stefanski scheme. You need those deep over routes, and I know they have the production with Kyle Pitts and Drake London. However, they've really been needing of a wide receiver too that is a steady force. Darnell Mooney had missed time with injury, and I think Nailor would be a perfect replacement. He's younger, and I think he has a higher ceiling going forward. He was playing behind Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. If you get him in the system, I think he could be kind of a guy who takes that next step in 2026. And I think he's just scratching at the surface of what he could become. And then we've got the Ravens. As we can see, another veteran signing, similar to Khalil Mack on the other side of the ball. It's going to be Keenan Allen. I think he fits this Ravens offense better than DeAndre Hopkins if they let him walk. Keenan Allen, at this stage of his career, he can still be your third down wide receiver. You have Zay, who operates mostly towards the boundaries and down the field, and then you could have Keenan Allen and Mark Andrews operate in the middle. This feels like good balance for a team that clearly wants to establish the run back in 2026, and I think Keenan could also provide some good leadership for this wide receiver group that is a very young group. And then we go to the Buffalo Bills, and they make a splash here. They go after Jauan Jennings, and I'll tell you why this is the perfect fit. Because if you're the Bills, you don't really want to address the wide receiver need in the draft at this point. You're going to be in the 20s or higher every single year, and you don't have the time at this point of Josh Allen's career where you just want a guy that's going to be productive from day one. You already swung and missed on Keon Coleman, so go after Jauan Jennings, who has done it on the biggest stage, and I would really like this fit for him. He's a big body wide receiver who can get down the field and is especially productive inside of the red zone. And then after the Bills, we've got the Panthers going after a budget tight end here. It's going to be Dallas Goedert. You can get him on a 2 to 3 year contract, and I think this pairs well with Bryce Young's time frame. You have him on the 5th year option right now, and in order to see if you're going to pay him long term, I think you need some more weapons outside of Terrell McMillan, and I think Goddard is just that. He obviously finished with 11 touchdowns in 2025. Some of it was just Kevin Petula's play calling. However, inside of the goal line, he is great at just getting into the flats, and he is a great yard after catch tight end at this point of his career. And Bryce Young and him could have a great mind meld because Bryce really has never had a talented tight end to play with in the NFL. So maybe that's something as an aspect of his game that would really take it to the next level. Really like this for the Panthers. Then we go to the Bears going after Jalen Watson, getting themselves a great corner who has playoff experience from the Chiefs. I like this because the Bears need some help in the secondary. I think they'll address the edge rusher and overall pass pressure in the draft. However, get some veterans on the back end to pair with Kevin Byard and really help this team take away the deep ball. That was their one detriment, is help in the secondary. So if you're able to get some more pass rushers in the draft and some help in the secondary, I think you go into 2026 as the NFC North favorite at this point, and I think that's what Ben Johnson would like to do. You want to clean up the defense so that way your offense has a lot more freedom in order to take chances, not knowing that your defense is going to let up a touchdown every drive. So the Bears address the defensive need, getting Jalen Watson from the Chiefs. And then we go to the Bengals, who are also going defense. However, they're going after a big ticket Devin Lloyd, linebacker from the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had a potent defense in 2025. The Bengals could use any player on defense, and I think they get a stud here. I think they're able to pay him top dollar and hope that he can kind of be the head of the snake that turns this defense around. You're in this contending window with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, but you don't know how many years left before the owners are just like, screw it, I'm sick of paying this money. So they go after Devin Lloyd in an effort to really recapture the division hopes, and I think it could turn their team around because Joe Burrow is still humming with this offense, no matter the offensive line, and you just need a few stops in order for this team to be in the playoffs, and at that point, it's anyone's game. Then we've got the Browns staying in division here. They're going to sign Wan'Dale Robinson. I know it's going to be hard to pry him off of the Giants. However, if there's one team that has the money to do so, it's the Cleveland Browns. And you could really use some weapons alongside Shedeur or whichever quarterback you go into the season with. And I think you could pair him with a top 5 wide receiver with your pick. You pair him and Carnell Tate. I think you're humming as far as weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Defense is already figured out. You have the defense that's going to be fine. There's no need to address any holes at that point. But you're losing all 5 of your offensive linemen to free agency, so you need some offensive playmakers to compensate for this and really hope that you can draft an offensive line that's able to protect your new quarterback. And I think Wan'Dale Robinson is perfect for that because he operates in all of the short line of scrimmage targets, and he's a quarterback's best friend, especially a young quarterback, who can just check it down to him and let Wan'Dale do all the dirty work. And then we've got the Cowboys going with Dre'Mont Jones. They could really use some pressure up front, and I think they get him from the Ravens. So they made the big splash move to get Quinnen Williams at the deadline, and this really kind of shored up their run defense. However, the one aspect that they're still struggling is against the pass, both in the secondary and getting pass rush to the quarterback. Dre'Mont Jones can do that. I know they don't have the most money to spend on top dollar players, but you have 2 picks inside of the top 20, so you can definitely get an edge rusher because they are at a premium in this draft class. So many good ones with such high potential. So you pair him with Dre'Mont Jones, and I think this Cowboys defense could really have a brief turnaround in 2026. Then, following up the Cowboys, it's going to be Quincy Williams going to the Broncos. I had a hard time finding the guy that the Broncos would actually really like because they're loaded at every position group. I know they don't have the top tier, but they have pretty much an A-tier player at every single position. However, Quincy Williams fits into this linebacker depth. You compare him with Ellis, which maybe was the detriment of their team, or their defense at least, and I'm just nitpicking, but adding some linebacker depth would definitely kind of serve its purpose as the season goes around. He's a guy that can play throughout the whole entire defensive scheme. I think he would be a great fit for this defense. And Quincy Williams makes his way into Denver. And then we got the Lions going after John Simpson, another team with not a lot of space. However, Dan Campbell and this Lions offense need more protection on the offensive line. John Simpson can do that. He can play guard, even tackle if you need him to, but I think the Lions just get him as a big body that you can add to this front 5 offensive line unit, just to kind of cycle in and out because they had so many injuries in 2025, and that's what makes them so great is when their offensive line is controlling the tempo and they're leaning on the run game rather than just having to play catch up through the air. So they hope that they can return back to that offensive game plan, and I think adding some more offensive line depth and maybe addressing that at pick number 17 in the NFL draft would also be a very smart decision. Sticking in division and sticking in the same position group, we are going to get DJ Humphries, an offensive tackle, to the Packers. Man, their offensive line, also similar to the Detroit Lions, was ravaged with injuries, and I think this was a good way to address that. You get Humphries, an aging veteran. You could probably get him on a 1-year contract, similar to how the Patriots got Morgan Moses, and you didn't really expect much out of him. However, it's the leadership that if you draft an offensive lineman, he could definitely mentor him very well, but he also plays meaningful snaps. You're going to need to establish Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson to keep this offensive system alive. The Matt LaFleur kind of offensive system relies upon throwing it when you've just been pounding it on the run game, and then you can't really do that if you're not able to establish the run. So they get some more bodies, and hopefully they can retain Rasheed Walker, their big left tackle. And then we've got the Houston Texans going after Rico Dowdle here. I think they would actually pull the trigger on this because Joe Mixon, no timetable for a return, missed all of the season, and I don't think there's any reason you should be relying on him to return in 2026. So you get him and Rico Dowdle and Woody Marks to pair together, which I think is a great fit. Woody Marks is still capable of being in this committee, whether it's 60-40 or even more in favor of Rico Dowdle. Woody Marks was kind of drafted to be a third down back. He had to do way more than he was asked to in 2025, but Rico Dowdle can definitely handle the short line of scrimmage yards and the first and second down carries. And I think he's a great culture fit for what DeMeco Ryans is looking for. They are a physical team, especially on the defense, and I think he would love to establish that identity on the offensive side of the ball, and this would definitely take some pressure off of CJ Stroud going into 2026 in hopes of a rebound for him in his career. So Rico Dowdle finds his way in Houston. And then we go to the Colts, and they go after Jalen Phillips. He was traded to the Eagles at the deadline as an edge rusher. And I think the Colts make this move because you're already all in. Whether you like it or not, you traded for Sauce Gardner. You paid almost everyone. Just go all in at this point. So you get the premier edge rusher. You pair him with DeForest Buckner, who comes back from injury. And I think you'll be right on the right track here going into 2026. Daniel Jones, hopefully he's ready by week 1. However, this defense can definitely help them establish some few wins to start the season, and Jalen Phillips can captain that defense. And then we've got the Jaguars staying in the division, going after Isaiah Likely. This offense has so many playmakers, and why not add another one? The one area that they're lacking some depth or really explosive talent is tight end position. So you have Brenton Strange, but I'm not saying that he can't be on the field. You can definitely play them in 2 tight end sets. However, Isaiah Likely adds another element to this offense where he can go down the field. He's great yards after the catch, and especially at high pointing the football, which with Trevor Lawrence, he's not the most accurate quarterback. I think I'm fair saying that. So if you put it in anywhere between the Isaiah Likely radius or just a jump ball, a 50-50 ball turns into a 70-30 ball with Isaiah Likely. So I think he's a good fit. And if you're Baltimore, you just paid Mark Andrews, so you can definitely move off of Isaiah Likely. If you didn't want to let him go, then you wouldn't have paid Andrews. So I think they move on, and the Jags get themselves an elite playmaker on the offensive side of the ball. Then we get the Chiefs going after Breece Hall. Man, would this be the perfect fit. For the Jets, I know the rumors are that he's going to get franchise tagged. However, what's the point? I mean, you're holding him hostage for his whole career. You might as well let him kind of fly free here with Kansas City. They tried to acquire him at the deadline. Last minute fell apart. However, I don't think they would miss their chance here if they're able to get their hands on him. So he could be a big ticket free agent for Kansas City who really needs to start finding a balance on the offensive side of the ball. It's been way too much running through the pass game in the sense of all these quick wide receiver screens, kind of in light of their lack of running game. And Isaiah Pacheco is just not going to get it done at this point. So get a big-time playmaker. Breece Hall is one of the top 10 running backs in the NFL. Can do it both in the pass game and the rushing game, obviously. And can hit the home run from anywhere, which is all obviously what you're trying to look for. If they're not stacking the box since you have Patrick Mahomes, get you a running back that is great between the tackles. And Breece Hall is certainly that. Then we've got the Raiders getting Rasheed Walker. I mentioned his name earlier in the hopes that the Packers would be able to retain their left tackle. However, they have so much cap issues that I think the Raiders could actually pry him away. The Raiders would pay him top dollar because they need some protection for their franchise quarterback in Fernando Mendoza. And in Clint Kubiak's offense, you need to rely on the run game and play off the play action, and you need to get Ashton Jeanty going early and often. So you get Rasheed Walker, and a left tackle is just a staple stone for your offensive line, and you could really lock him in for the next 4 or 5 years to be the protector of your franchise quarterback, which is, I think, is a great fresh start for a team going into 2026 if you have a new head coach, quarterback, a second-year kind of top generational talent, Ashton Jeanty, and now a left tackle. I think those are the bones of a good team, and then you just hope that you can find the kind of auxiliary pieces in order to make it all work. So the Raiders get themselves an offensive lineman, and so do the Chargers. Wyatt Teller, obviously, he is on his way out of Cleveland, as well as all of the offensive linemen on the Cleveland Browns. I can't remember the last time all 5 offensive linemen from a day 1 starting team are all free agents. But Wyatt Teller finds his way on the Chargers, and this is a no-brainer. They need protection up front, and you bring in Mike McDaniel into the offense as the OC, and he wants to establish the run, and so does Jim Harbaugh. That's the identity they want for this team. So they want someone that's going to protect Justin Herbert and get Omarion Hampton going. Get Wyatt Teller, who can really move around anywhere on the offensive line, which by the past kind of few seasons for the Chargers offensive line injury struggles, you could really use a guy that could play everywhere just in case. So Wyatt Teller fits that bill. And then we go across the city to LA. It is going to be Greg Newsome. Getting some more help on the secondary, I think, is a smart play for the Rams. You saw them only get beat by the Seahawks just strictly because they were going after Emmanuel Forbes, especially on third down. So if you don't have a third corner that's able to kind of shadow a wide receiver, you're going to find some ways that teams will exploit you. I think the Rams will look intrusively this offseason and realize that that was a fatal flaw in their defensive system, and Greg Newsome can fill that hole immediately. He's a tall, lengthy corner that I think could shadow a wide receiver 2 at best, and I'm not saying he has to be the best cornerback on your team. You also have a top 20 pick that you can address corner with a young corner. However, I think Newsome is definitely a consolation prize if they are kind of more willing to just draft a playmaker in the top 20. So you get Newsome to the LA Rams, and then we got the Dolphins. Yes, I know it's not the most flashy signing going after Hollywood Brown. However, with Tyreek Hill now cut, you have Jalen Waddle and no one else in the pass game. So whichever quarterback comes in here, you need, in order to kind of see if he's the guy, you need some weapons around him. You're going to lean on Devon Achane, but with Jalen Waddle and potentially Hollywood Brown, you can get back to that identity that you actually made the playoffs for once, and that's just speed everywhere. If you have Achane, Waddle, and Hollywood Brown, 3 field stretchers that can kind of score from anywhere, and Hollywood Brown was quietly averaging over 70 receiving yards without Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy in the lineup for those first few weeks. And I think he's capable of doing more than he was asked to in Kansas City. They had a plethora of deep shot wide receivers, but if he's kind of the main man in that role, I think he could thrive. So the Dolphins get Hollywood Brown to be their wide receiver 2. And then we've got the Minnesota Vikings going after Kenneth Gainwell. Yes, I think the Steelers will let him go. I think the price tag will be a little bit too much for them, especially since they just drafted Caleb Johnson. You could pair Johnson and Jalen Warren to kind of have that committee similar to last year. And for the Vikings, you can get Kenneth Gainwell, and maybe you could just cut Aaron Jones and save yourself $8 million against the cap. So that way you have Gainwell and Jordan Mason, which is, I think, a good cost-effective solution to this offense. He's a little bit younger than Aaron Jones, and he showed more flashes in 2025 than I think many people anticipated him to. He had more receptions than DK Metcalf on the Steelers, and I thought he was very impressive, especially after the catch. Going down the field, I remember that play against the Lions, going deep, 40 yards, contested catch. These are just some of the traits that he actually possesses, which is a rare feat for a running back. And then you could have Jordan Mason run between the tackles. So that's the way another kind of short line of scrimmage target for J.J. McCarthy makes things a little bit easier, get him involved in the screen game, and not to ask too much of J.J. McCarthy going into year 3, but really year 2 as a starter. And then we've got the New England Patriots going after Alec Pierce here. I think they're going to have to pay top dollar, but they have no problem doing so. You can pair him with Stephon Diggs, who is kind of on the tail end of his career, and really pair him with Drake May on the time frame in order for them to be successful for the next 4 to 5 years. I think it's a great combo. Drake May, obviously a deep ball specialist, and Alec Pierce has led the league in ADOT in back-to-back years. That is average depth of target. So most of his catches are coming down the field anyway, but he showed that he could do much more than that, especially in the red zone. And with quarterback play of Joe Flacco and Riley Leonard down the stretch, he was actually very, very productive. So I think he is in line for a big contract, and him and Kayshon Boutte could be best partners in crime in New England for the next few years. And then we go to the Saints going after Tyler Algier, a little bit of a budget running back. I know many people want them to draft Jeremiah Love inside the top 10. However, you go with Tyler Algier, save some money, and I think he's capable of doing a lot more than he was asked to in Atlanta. He stays in the division, goes to a place where he'll get a bigger role. And with Tyler Shuck, you just need some more balance on this offense. You have Chris Olave, but hopefully they draft another wide receiver to pair alongside him. So if you go into the season with Mekhi Lemon, Chris Olave, and Tyler Algier, with Alvin Kamara sprinkled in as the receiving back, I think you're in great shape in order to give Tyler Shuck a shot to actually win this division. And Tyler Algier, career over 4.3 yards per carry, and is a red zone monster with 8 touchdowns in 2025. I think that is a recipe that is going to continue in New Orleans, and I think this is a great budget deal for them. And then we got the Giants going after Alontae Taylor, another quarterback that is helpful on the back end. They have the front four, or at least the talent on the front four, in order to get pressure. You have Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Abdul Carter. I mean, this team should be getting pressure to the quarterback, but I think a lot of the struggles was actually just wide receivers were getting open so easily. So you get some more kind of corner and secondary depth that I think can actually speed some things up. Another play that I would like them to do is draft Caleb Downs at pick number 5. You pair him with some free agent corners, and this way everything is locked down on the secondary, and you allow your front four to get pressure without having to blitz every single play. And I think this would be a great and solid move for the Giants. And then we've got the New York Jets right across town at MetLife. We've got Malik Willis going there. So obviously the landing spots are the Dolphins, Cardinals, and Jets for Malik Willis, but I think the Jets actually pulled the trigger here. They have a roster that is very young, and so is Malik Willis. So if you're able to hit the home run here, you could actually build through the draft alongside of him, made those big trades with the Colts in order to get their picks for the next few years, and you also have your own picks, so you're going to be looking at 2 first-round picks for the kind of next 3 years. And if you want to build young, which is kind of the recipe for success in the NFL, getting Malik Willis and just kind of building the ship around him certainly serves you well. Maybe a 2 to 3 year contract, maybe $25 million per year, and give him a real shot. If you bring back Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, you have enough playmakers to actually see what he's got. And then you also have the NFL draft in order to kind of compensate for some more weapons. So I think this would be a solid move. I mean, he showed great poise without Jordan Love and really dominated in that game against the Ravens, which I think left people thinking that Malik Willis has a lot more left in the tank, and the Jets take a shot on him. Then we got the Eagles going after Elijah Vera Tucker, another Jets offensive lineman that finds his way onto a different team. they just weren't a cohesive unit, and I think the Eagles will definitely pounce on a guy that they hope can be like the Mekhi Becton signing that helped them win a Super Bowl, a former Jets offensive lineman, and they could use some more depth here to pair with Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson, who are both getting older, so you get some more guys that can kind of fit this 1 to 2 year build and really help them going from day one in training camp in order to make another Super Bowl push. That is the offensive identity that they need to incorporate. It is just leaning on Saquon Barkley in this offensive line, but they weren't able to do so because of the injuries in this past season, so hopefully they get some more bodies and are able to reestablish that identity. And then the Steelers going after Romeo Doubs. I think he is as good as gone from the Packers. They strictly just don't have the money to pay him. And they have enough playmakers to compensate for this. However, the Steelers do not. They have DK Metcalf and no one else. You can make the argument for Calvin Austin, but I think he profiles more as like a wide receiver 3 field stretcher. So you get a guy that can pair alongside DK Metcalf and a guy that consistently wins inside the 5-yard line. Felt like every time they were throwing inside of the goal line, it was to Romeo Doubs, whether a slant or a fade. He seemingly comes down with everything, and he had over 100 yards against the Bears in the playoffs. And I think the Steelers are just looking for a guy that could actually serve some production. Consistently kind of struggles with DK Metcalf, who couldn't really get it done on a weekly basis. A few splash weeks, but Romeo Doubs is as consistent as they come and would be a good complement to DK Metcalf and whichever quarterback they decide to roll forward in 2026. Then the Niners going back after Deebo Samuel. I think this return makes a lot of sense for multiple reasons. One being that George Kittle is out for the first foreseeable future of the season, maybe 8 weeks, I'm not really sure. But Deebo Samuel coming back into the fold with Ricky Pearsall struggling with injury, they're going to need production from day one, and Deebo Samuel can do that. He probably has 1 to 2 years left of good production, and he actually showed some flashes of Washington of being the old Deebo, getting crazy yards after catch, and I think he thrives in this Kyle Shanahan offense. And what better way to return and finish out his career in San Francisco in hopes of winning a Super Bowl, now that I think the Washington Commanders Super Bowl window is slightly closed, or at least kind of tinted after that NFC Championship run, and that's just due to the defense. I'm still very bullish on Jaden Daniels, but that defense needs so many fixes, so I think Deebo moves on and finds his way onto the Niners. Then we got the Seahawks going after David Njoku. Yes, the rich get richer in this sense. Njoku said he's already out of town, and I think the Seahawks will definitely pounce on him. If there's one area they could use some more depth, it's tight end. So they have the weapons in Shaheed and JSN, the 2 great running backs, and then you can pair him with A.J. Barner and run 2 tight end sets. It is perfect for this team in order to make another Super Bowl run. Njoku still has a lot of juice left. The Browns simply can't pay him because they just drafted Harold Fannin, who seemingly does the same product on the field. So you get Njoku with A.J. Barner, and this team is right back to the playoffs, no doubt in my mind. And then we've got the Bucks going after Kwity Paye, a big-ticket, expensive free agent here. Getting pass rushers is a premium for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their defense is aging very quickly, and they need to get younger on the defensive side of the ball. You have Vita Vea to stop the run. However, you need some pass rushers. So I would expect them to go edge rusher in this year's draft, and pairing an edge rusher with the run stopping ability of Vita Vea as well as Kwity Paye is a defensive front four that I would not want to play against. So the Buccaneers make a smart move here, and I think they're in hopes of kind of recapturing this division over the Panthers and the Saints and Falcons if they're able to make a run. But the Bucs are in need of this because Baker Mayfield in this offense is ready to roll right now. They have been very productive in recent years, and you're kind of in this 2 to 3 year contending window for this division. So you might as well make the most of it and spend top dollar on free agency. And I like this move getting Kwity Paye. So then we go to the Titans getting Kyle Pitts. Yes, they are going to have to pay top dollar, but I think they do so. And they do this because Brian Daboll is going to want to surround his quarterback with some more weapons, just not Calvin Ridley and Shamir DK going into 2026. So you get Kyle Pitts, who is coming off a year with over 900 receiving yards and really took flight at the end. The back 4 games here with Kirk Cousins, he showed that he could be the wide receiver 1, if de facto kind of guy, because he is that athletic build that plays like a wide receiver. So you get him, and maybe you draft a wide receiver even at pick number 4 or in the second round, and you give Cam Ward a shot to be as productive as he was supposed to be in year 1. I think he still showed a lot of great flashes. I'm still very bullish on Cam Ward, and I think Kyle Pitts would probably help bring the best out of Ward. He's great at extending plays, and Kyle Pitts can get open and re-get open for Cam Ward cycling through the pocket. So I think Cam Ward gets himself a big playmaker in Kyle Pitts. And then we've got the Commanders to finish us out. It's going to be Joey Bosa, some veteran leadership on this defensive side of the ball. They're definitely going to address defense in almost every round of the NFL draft. However, Bosa was very productive on the Bills. He was seemingly a leader for this defensive unit with Ed Oliver out due to injury. And I think the Commanders will definitely try and chase that similar production. You need some more pass rush. You have Mikey Sanders still on the back end, but outside of that, it's going to be a bunch of new faces. And Joey Bosa seemingly came into the Bills defense as a new face and was extremely productive. So the Washington Commanders and Dan Quinn want to get that identity back of being a defensive first team. And I think Bosa will help from day one. And that is going to do it for the 2026 Every Team One free agency signing that they need to make. Drop a comment if I got your team right. And if I didn't, let me know who you want your team to sign. And that is going to do it for the video. So please hit the subscribe button before you go. And peace.